iba yung kwela. Tawagin kulit ko naman mo. Kaya ka.
So you believe what you want, but I told you, me smoking a joint drives this guy up the wall, and he's convinced that this goes back 20 fucking years of people babbling about me and to the police that somehow I'm going to go in. It literally says this on paperwork. That I'll go into heroin withdrawal from marijuana. So like smoke a joint and you like it bother me while I'm smoking a joint, I will go into heroin withdrawal. That's what it says on paperwork. I forget who wrote what where. It comes from people babbling amongst themselves and then to the police. So and I know it doesn't make sense. I never said that what people say about me makes sense, but they're convinced of it. These people babble amongst themselves. It's a long time ago. It's a combination of some people talking directly to cops because they're stupid or they're fucked up on drugs or drunk or whatever, and other people babbling to people who happen to be some level of informant. Yeah, I still have the joint. Are you mad about that? You checking the link? I don't know who any legit. I don't know if we have any legitimate viewers at the moment. I know there's about a dozen accounts that leave chat messages. It's the same person. They keep talking about weirdo shit. And when they copy and paste their links in their text into what they're using Google Translate or whatever, when they copy it into the chat box here, at the very bottom is some English. At the very bottom is some English text that says like what the advertisements that they were looking at. Weird shit. These people. What did it say? It said Kamala Harris and then somebody else. I forget who. Fan fiction in the chat box. Was that yesterday? God damn. So 10 minutes and I think about 5 minutes of a joint in there. I'm supposed to care that I'm pissing these people off. And the funny part is, all them people, like the junkies are basically dead. The people that worked in whatever agencies and shit, they don't work there now. Bunch of them are the cops, they're not cops up there anymore. All these people that they do this and that, all this, they're all fucking dumb. We're still doing the same thing.
Always talking, never got a clue. Who the fuck am I now? Who the fuck is you? Riding with my thugs, we just trying to get this money. You can put that on me, we keep the artillery. If they cross me, then it's R.I.P. It's for my real thugs. But once they squeeze the thorn and bleed, just to smell the rose buds. In the search of finer things, maybe God will notice me if I blink. That's what it sound like when the pistols sing. Mama checking the obituary, so she don't see me. She cry when they talk about the boy on TV. Wake up some mornings and I don't want a baby. They say the criminal or gangster is all he'll ever be. Like there's nothing positive in me. I am positive you're not getting rid of me, at least not that easily. I just wake up and crush the day in the rush to get paid to the devil he can wait. I got people on my serve on the way. I just wake up and crush the day in the rush to get paid. Tell God to look away. Somebody wanna see it, yeah. I just wake up and crush the day. I just wake up and crush the day in the rush to get paid. Tell the devil he can wait. I got people on my serve on the way. I just wake up and crush the day in the rush to get paid. Tell God to look away. This ain't what they wanna see. I just wake up and crush the day. Yeah, they say home is where the heart is, but back home I was living heartless. We all hard-headed. yeah, they trying to prove whose hands the hardest. If thugging was an art, you could consider me an artiste. Most of my friends grew up not knowing who their father is. Nothing in their fridge, you can see they ribs. Yep, this is how we live. Coming from a place that had nothing left to give,
Yeah,
nothing left
the
to
browser
take.
just
There's nothing on the
magically
plate, but I'm streaming no
closed
mistake.
and
Everything is
reopened
state.
all on
I
its
give
own.
over my life, either 5
Never gives
stars
you
or
problems.
behind
So
bars.
we're doing
Lock the
this.
jaws, we holding on. Puff, pass it on, cause I'm okay too. What I've been through ain't what you've been through. What I feel you, yeah, it's true. Everything outside your window waiting to kill you. You think you know, but you ain't got a clue. Hear me out, Sherlock. Ain't no such thing as a sure shot. This is a cold block, and I just want what you got. It's real talk. Don't make a scene, just give it up. That's how it is. Where the fuck I'm from? Where the fuck I'm from? Where the fuck I'm from? Yeah. I just wake up and crush the day. In the rush to get paid to the devil, he can wait. I got people on my serve on the way. I just wake up and crush the day. In the rush to get paid, tell God to look away. Somebody wanna see, yeah. I just wake up and crush the day. I just wake up and crush the day. In the rush to get paid to the devil. I don't need no feedback. I'm trying to put my seat back. Don't worry about that other shit. You'll never get it back. Rise like a phoenix from the ashes, like they said I never do. The ones always talking never got a clue. Who the fuck am I now? Who the fuck is you? Riding with my thugs, we just trying to get this money. You can put that on me, we keep the artillery. If they cross me, then it's R.I.P. It's for my real thugs, the ones that squeeze the door and bleed just to smell the rosebud. In the search of finer things, maybe God will notice me if I blame. That's what it sounds.
I don't know what these people think we're doing so important. I would have finished this an hour ago if these people would have fucked up and left us alone.
You tell us a little about yourself.
The details of my life are quite inconsequential.
Oh, no, please. Let's hear about your childhood.
I did that hustler scream, roll with that ambition. My whole childhood I've been on a mission. Reading up the habits of the mission. Only take me a second to throw the clip in. Flick shots, gonna get the dip in. You be wise to listen. I'm just a crack dealer, rolling in a cuss jackal. At the back of the gas, I'm throwing at you. I've been pointing to my chemical when you were born at you. See around here, we do more than we have to. First we shoot you, let me stab you in the middle of cap. Cat the cops don't care what happened. That's why we stick to the gangs and drug trafficking. They say my destiny is hell, and then I have a shit for every one of my crack sales. I say fuck it, tell the devil to prepare me yourself. I keep my head in the streets, keep my head in the streets. Lose sleep or breathe, but it's all I need. Keep my head in the streets, keep my head in the streets. Lose sleep or breathe, lost already speak. Keep my head in the streets, keep my head in the streets. Lose sleep or breathe, but it's all I need. Keep my head in the streets, keep my head in the streets. Lose sleep or breathe, lost already speak. I'm on this road, and I don't know where I'm heading. Gotta face these dead until I'm strong. Last entry of a lost soul. I gave God a cold shoulder. Now I'm on my own, a cold soldier. Let's see, walk with me, judge me not. So I can blaze weed. If I'm not supposed to, maybe Lord, you should come and take me. Bring an end to this shit, chasing dreams. Till the end, I'll be shit, chasing with my team. Making it by enemies. Heaven seems so far. When you selling what they selling, their souls for. But I should go, Lord. I'm a soldier, till my soul burns. It's hard to get this cold world. I'm with a bug, how the end turns out. I'ma ride till the sun burns out. Everything in this world gets swallowed by time. Money makes the world keep my head in the street. Keep my head in the street. Lose sleep or breathe, but it's all I need. Keep my head in the street. Keep my head in the street. Lose sleep or breathe, while I'm already speak. Keep my head.
See if we can get 5 minutes in a row before this fucks up. You're a fat, noisy bastard.
Planet. In
Oh, this will be okay. Hold on.
meals from Canada's #1 meal kit company, go to makegoodfood.ca and
See when
redeem
that comes
your
through
offer
so
with
loud and
promo
clear, and
code.
then listen to the United Nations again.
So we've been
Oh, that's
talking
not as bad
about
as
a
it
new
gets.
platform we've been
That's not as bad as it gets sometimes.
Many dark hours.
And I think that's in some ways why the escape was so essential. You know, there's a lot of scenes when I sort of pick up the crown princess, you know, like I'm a teenager, and we jump in the car and off we go. And I think those were really important for him to.
我每天都做早饭 all in today's Chinese studio. Cam, we learned kitchen yesterday, which is 厨房 in Chinese. Now, the first new word today.
If you tell me anything, I'm going to forget how to say cook food. Oh, I knew how to say infrared, and then for some reason at the end of the 25-minute version, they ran a 5-minute version, and now I can say toilet paper and my stomach hurts or whatever the fuck. Jesus Christ.
I talk about my 9 cause the shit's so hot. When shit goes down, he's ready to pop. He's stressed out and I'm trigger happy. I gotta take the life and it feels so nasty. Believe me, this shit ain't easy. I'm a nigga with attitude, so fuck you pussy. When bullets fly, bow, when bullets fly, bow. What you gonna do when them bullets fly, bow? When bullets fly, bow, when bullets fly, bow. What you gonna do?
Do you think about these people started shooting at each other? They would tell us on the news. They would tell us. The whole countries where they just turn off the internet whenever they want. The Philippines and China disagree as to whether these 200 vessels are fishing vessels or militia vessels. Why would they tell us
Let
that?
it go for the power. Bullets fly by like a breeze in the summer. Cold dog set FDLCTE, RIP, and KSP, HOTSHOT. ITSLE, yeah, it's me. I let my bullets fly by, shooting at you niggas like kites in the sky. Blue beams, I'm killing this rap shit. So what you gonna do when my bullets fly by? When bullets fly by, when bullets fly by. What you gonna do when them bullets fly by? When bullets fly by, when bullets fly by. What you gonna do when them bullets fly by? What you gonna do when them bullets fly by? What you gonna do when them bullets fly by? What you gonna do when them bullets fly by? What you gonna do when them bullets fly by? Every day niggas talking shit like they tough in this motherfucking street, but they not, nigga. When the bullets fly by, them niggas tough like bitches. Your boy, you know, HOTSHOT, Cold Dog, Revolution in Process Records, KSP the Zone Records. When bullets fly by, when bullets fly by. What you gonna do when them bullets fly by? When bullets fly by, when bullets fly by. What you gonna do when them bullets fly by?
Exit Jarvis and the on-ramps from Maurice, northbound Bay and Jarvis to the eastbound Garden are also shut down, so you're going to need to use small train routes if you got to get around this spot. Also on the northbound Don Valley Parkway, York Mills got some problems here in the right shoulder, but police are there blocking the right lane, so it's delayed from just north of Lawrence to York Mills. And also the West 401 Express ramp to the 409 in Islington is closed right now because of a collision here. Also an in-town crash at Highway 7 in Kipling. Looking to buy a home? Purple Bricks is dedicated home buying realtors in your community ready to help and give you $2,000 cash back. Visit purplebricks.ca. Restrictions apply. I'm Rory, your Benedict. Global News Radio, 640 Toronto. Chopper traffic.
Insightful, engaging, and intelligent. This is CFNJ Global News Radio 640 Toronto, a Chorus Entertainment company.
This isn't the alarm, man. I changed that.
You're listening to Global News Radio. This is Global News at 9 o'clock.
Good evening from the Global News Desk. I'm Darren Boland. Starting tomorrow, the entire province will enter a new state of emergency and stay-at-home order. The decision from the Ford government comes just days after announcing a province-wide shutdown. Global's Queen's Park Bureau Chief, Travis.
Broadcast transmitted 7 a.m. Beijing time. examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host,
Shane Bingham with you.
Remember, that means center of the
April
universe.
8th, 2021. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, Beijing says the revised IMF forecast shows confidence in the Chinese economy. Wuhan is marking 1 year since the end of its citywide COVID-19 lockdown. The European Medicines Agencies found a possible link between AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine and a rare clotting disorder.
Yes, but then over
This
here they're
case
saying,
clearly demonstrates one of the challenges posed by large
learning today following Peel Region's change to virtual learning yesterday. At a press conference today, Education Minister Stephen Lecce
spot in the record books. Now the day's top stories. The Chinese president has urged Germany and the European Union to make joint efforts with China to promote healthy cooperation and bring more certainty and stability to a volatile world. Xi Jinping made the remarks in a phone conversation with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. He says China-Germany ties have been growing steadily and show strong resilience and potential despite the COVID-19 pandemic. China's remained Germany's largest trading partner globally for 5 consecutive years. Next year will mark the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and Germany. The Chinese president says the two sides should seize the opportunity to boost exchanges in technology, education, culture, and sports. Angela Merkel says strengthening EU-China dialogue and cooperation is not only in the interests of both sides, but also beneficial to the world, adding that Germany is willing to play a positive role in this regard. She says Germany is willing to work with China to strengthen exchanges and cooperation in such fields as the fight against COVID-19, and as well as climate change and biodiversity. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian says the upgraded IMF forecast on China's economic growth rate reflects the world confidence in the Chinese economy.
The IMF expected the global recovery to be stronger than before. This is the result of the active international cooperation among different countries in fighting the pandemic and vigorously promoting the resumption of production and work. This has proved the necessity and effectiveness for the international community to strengthen solidarity and coordination in tackling the global crisis.
Zhao says the Chinese economy was among the first to get out of the crisis in 2020 and injected strong impetus into the recovery and development of the global economy. The spokesman says the international community should continue its cooperation throughout the global economic recovery. The IMF put China's 2021 growth rate at 8.4% in its latest issue of the World Economic Outlook. That's up 0.3 points from the January forecast. The managing director of the International Monetary Fund says the global economy is recovering after the worst recession since World War II. Kristalina Georgieva was speaking after the IMF released its 2021 Global Policy Agenda.
Vaccine policy is economic policy. Faster progress in ending the health crisis could add almost $9 trillion to global GDP by 2025. Best value for public money in our times. But this window of opportunity is closing fast.
For a fair shot at recovery, Georgieva says countries need to prioritize fair vaccine distribution.
The key is to support vulnerable households and viable firms so long as the crisis is with us. This requires targeted fiscal measures and maintaining favorable financial conditions.
And she also identified scaling up on public investment in green projects and digital infrastructure as another priority to spur recovery. The IMF says it's so far supported 86 countries with over $110 billion. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations overtook the European Union to become China's biggest trading partner in 2020. China's foreign trade with the bloc accounted for over 14% of its total imports and exports during the period. Analysts say the deepening economic ties between China and ASEAN are expected to be pivotal as the region seeks to rebound from the coronavirus pandemic. Mohammed Iqbal is deputy president of the China-ASEAN Business Association.
That kept on despite the pandemic, and that has continued to accelerate in some ways. And then look at the potential that we are having in 2021 is that the recovery phase in China is going to set in, and that will increase the FDI, and with it, the trade and investment flows.
Well, since the establishment of the China-ASEAN Free Trade Area in 2010, the trade in goods and services between China and ASEAN countries has grown rapidly through the deep integration of industrial chains and value chains. Tariffs on 7,000 products have been canceled under the Trade Pact. In 2002, the trade volume between China and ASEAN countries was only $55 billion, while it exceeded $600 billion in 2019. The trade growth between China and the trade bloc keeps gathering momentum following the signing of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership in November. The 15 participating countries account for around 30% of global population, global GDP, and global trade. A report published by Petrie and Plummer showed that RCEP can add over $200 billion annually to world incomes and $500 billion to world trade by 2030. More on this, Guoyan spoke with Shan Saeed, chief economist of HUNGR IQI based in Malaysia.
What do you make of the deepening trade ties between China and ASEAN?
I think the deepening ties between China and ASEAN clearly signifies the growing importance of this region. And if you see, China has got 5 trading partners: ASEAN, EU, US, Japan, and South Korea. But ASEAN has taken the lead. The trade volume touched $730 billion last year, which is roughly like 4.7 billion yuan. It clearly demonstrates the growing economic cooperation between ASEAN and China. Plus, ASEAN is very important because China's Belt and Road initiative runs through 3 important countries in ASEAN, that is Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. And in my opinion, Belt and Road is the only winning infrastructure investment.
Like that process because it is subjective. So we're now moving to the driver's license number and your birthday date, month, year. Very similar to what they're using in Minnesota. So we're following that model. We think it's a very objective way of moving forward.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, it is impossible to ignore the timing of this legislation. It followed an election where 2 Democrats were elected to the U.S. Senate in Georgia. I mean, how do you address
vaccine appointment process or whatever the fuck you're doing? No, this does not work. Is this or
this recommendation, and so they promised to write a scientific article that would clearly explain to the scientific community why they have done this. All right, and so we were waiting with great expectation.
Strategy. Plus, it will help many countries in ASEAN to reduce poverty in the region. If you see, China has got 800 million people out of poverty in the last 36 years, which is simply remarkable in the modern economic history. Plus,
wait a second.
Economic and regional progression for all countries. It will bring rising income levels for both ASEAN and China. Goods and services will move much faster. And why this region will prosper? Because it has got 4 important variables: macroeconomic stability, modern infrastructure, productive labor force, and most importantly, all the countries are on the same level in terms of economic progression. So I think RCEP is a huge benefit, and it will bring dividends in the long run.
China and ASEAN enjoyed an official dialogue relationship for 3 decades. What's your take on the prospect of their future integration at this kind of historical threshold?
The world knows that China is leading from the front. Whether we like it or not, China is the new global macro and economic power. And the pivot of economic and global is moving towards China. And there is a growing economic activities in China. So everybody wants to leverage from that.
So the technical term is propaganda.
So I think
very
more and more
proactive.
cooperation will happen, especially in 5G, digital economy, manufacturing, infrastructure, service sector, and chip making. So these sectors and industries will tend to benefit more. Then we will have growing regional ties among all the countries. We will have people-to-people cooperation, government-to-government cooperation. We have huge conglomerates collaborating with each other.
And that was Shan Saeed, chief economist of HUNGR IQI based in Malaysia, on trade between China and ASEAN. Coming up, 1 year since the end of the citywide lockdown in Wuhan.
Dive into the sports world with Sideline Story.
And this is really, to me, really egregious because the only data they show, and according to their data, they present one figure of data. According to this figure, it shows that the 16-week interval indeed seems optimal. Now, this was based on a mathematical model, and I've heard lots about the mathematical models in Canada. They dictate all of our policies. So this is an epidemiological model into which a bunch of assumptions were plugged in, and remarkably, there's no information about this model in the paper. In fact, they admit this data model is currently being prepared for publication as at the time of writing. So it has not been published. We have not been able to evaluate the key model that spit out this 16-week interval. So I tell you again, the questions that have been posed by the international community, which tenacity is, where is your data, still stands as of today. We still have no empirical data.
This is the old bell at Jianhanguan, a landmark in Wuhan, ringing at midnight on April 8, 2020, when the provincial capital of Hubei province lifted outbound travel restrictions following a COVID-19 lockdown lasting nearly 11 weeks. The coronavirus outbreak infected more than 50,000 people in Wuhan, leaving over 3,800 dead. The city's economy has been gradually recovering from the pandemic over the past year. Data shows that Wuhan registered a GDP of over 1.5 trillion yuan, or $230 billion last year, ranking 9th among the top 10 Chinese cities with the strongest GDP in 2020. Professor Zhou Wei with Wuhan University says the pandemic has raised awareness of the importance of modern science and technology, which also boosts economic development.
We can step up our efforts to promote the rapid development of emerging industries, such as life and health sciences, as well as the digital economy, while phasing out underdeveloped ones. There's a lot of room in Wuhan for this sector.
Some companies in the city are also trying to boost the local economy by launching products featuring cherry blossom. Deputy General Manager Hu Yifei of a local food enterprise says they have introduced snacks themed on the beautiful pink flowers.
We integrated elements of cherry blossoms into the package designs, atmosphere, and overall picture to make consumers feel like they're coming to a cherry blossom garden when they enter any of our 2,700 stores.
Some stores in Wuhan have also been decorated by bringing in cherry blossom elements, leading to a huge increase in their daily sales volume.
A little subtle shot.
Keep in mind, there are two ways to achieve that. One is through vaccination, and one is through natural infection, right? And the natural infection, what people have to understand is, once a natural infection has occurred and people have cleared the virus, that provides very broad-based and very long-lasting immunity that has been proven in multiple publications, peer-reviewed papers, that it is quite protective and probably going to be more protective than the vaccine-induced immunity against the variants that will inevitably emerge because it targets multiple components of the virus, not one component. And cutting-edge data that was just published, so again, I'm citing published data right here, from a study that came out of British Columbia, shows in British Columbia, there might be, among the adult population, it's thought to be higher among children who've been back to school. Among the adult population in British Columbia, there might be over 50% of the adults already immune to this virus through naturally acquired immunity. So that's the good news. And
it's not lasting immunity.
As immunologists, one of our suggestions here is, knowing that naturally acquired immunity is protective, and the goal is actually to acquire immunity, not just to stick a needle in somebody's arm, we could be not only prioritizing these vaccines for those who need it most, but among those people as well, if we were testing for evidence of immunity, we could exclude what is probably a very large proportion of the population who don't need protection immediately.
Yeah, but we're not even tracing at this point. So that's just a dream at this point. Just quickly, I've got literally about 20 seconds. People are going to ask me, so what do I do? Do I get one vaccine and protect myself? What would you tell people? Get the shot?
As a scientist, we've thrown the scientific process out the window in Canada right now, and I don't know why. There's a reason for it. As a scientist, all I can recommend is if people are going to get the vaccine, they should get it according to the protocol that's been approved by Health Canada and approved by the manufacturers themselves. They will stand by that protocol. As a scientist looking at the data, I will stand by that protocol. I cannot, in good faith, recommend any interval other than the 3-week interval for Pfizer and 4-week interval for Moderna.
All righty. Well, that will go down like a lead balloon for my listeners, but thank you very much. Doctor, I always appreciate your time, and we will talk again.
It was my pleasure. Take care.
That is Dr. Byron Bridle joining us, and he is a viral immunologist at the University of Guelph. All right. How was your day of homeschooling? Hell? I'm being kind there. And do you
utilize services provided by community hospitals and family doctors. That means when going to a specialty hospital, patients will pay higher consultation fees. This has diverted patients to go to family doctors and community hospitals for common diseases and prescription renewals. A resident from downtown Beijing said
used and benefited from traditional Chinese medicine. Then they told us they didn't have enough supply of TCM materials to supply the whole world. Then they stopped talking about that.
I have limited mobility, so my family had to go with me. I don't have to face these problems when going to a community hospital. I can do everything on my own.
Official data showed that over half of the clinical visits made by residents in Beijing went to a community hospital last year, reaching a historic high. For the Beijing Hour, this is Fei Fei.
Ministry of Education's released a Protection Act for minors at school and is seeking public opinion. There's already heated debate on whether primary and middle schools should publish student test results and rankings. Juju has more.
The Protection Act says primary and middle schools should keep their students' test results and rankings private. Previously, schools in China would normally announce students' test results and rankings to the whole class and even school, especially for some important tasks such as midterm and final exams. Some support the act, saying this will help with the students' all-round development and protect their privacy.
I think getting a good grade is important, but the students' comprehensive abilities are more important.
Publishing the test results will harm students' self-esteem. We should protect their privacy.
Some say students should have the courage to face reality. In 2018, the Ministry of Education published 30 rules to relieve students' burden. One of them stipulated that schools are not allowed to publish students' test results and rankings through any platforms. However, many schools haven't followed the rules. Current affairs commentator Zhang Jianfeng says this was due to historical reasons of China's education system.
China's 9-year compulsory education lacks high-quality resources, as our country has a large population. It takes test grades as the only evaluation for students, which is not good for fostering versatile students and those who have this special personality. The act of not publishing students' test results can help break such a model.
Though schools are not encouraged to publish their students' test results, parents and students can still know about the results in private. They can check the results via different platforms, such as from the mini app released by schools. The Protection Act for minors at school also says primary and middle schools should not arrange students to have classes during their legal holidays and weekends. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Juju.
Coming up, a possible link between AstraZeneca's COVID vaccine and a rare clotting disorder.
Find the Beijing Hour on social media. Talk to us on Twitter at the Beijing Hour or on Facebook at the Beijing Hour.
Make up 50 and 90%, 50 to 90% of
blood clots and low blood platelets is very rare, and the overall benefits of the shot outweigh the risk. Agency Executive Director Emer Cook says the results show that their system of monitoring side effects is working.
This case clearly demonstrates one of the challenges posed by large-scale vaccination campaigns. When millions of people receive these vaccines, very rare events can occur that were not identified during the clinical trials.
The findings were released after the regulator assessed over 80 cases of unusual blood clots after people were given the AstraZeneca shot in Europe and the UK. 18 of these cases resulted in death. The agency says the investigation was unable to determine the specific cause of the blood clotting. In the meantime, the World Health Organization said in a statement on Wednesday, a link between the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine and the blood clots with low platelets is considered plausible, but it's not been confirmed. Brazil has set another grim record with more than 4,000 deaths from COVID-19 in a single day. Vaccination is moving forward, but the pace is slow. Paulo Cabral has the latest.
Prospects are bleak in Brazil, at least for the next few weeks. COVID-19 is still spreading and picking up speed, with infections curve pointing upwards in the federal district and 13 of Brazil's 26 states. In 8 states, figures are stable, and only in 5 the curve is now pointing downwards. Here in the state of São Paulo, Brazil's richest and most populated, the so-called emergency phase is set to be in place until Sunday, but an extension of the measures has not been ruled out by authorities. In this phase, only essential businesses like drugstores and food markets have been allowed to work, and there is a nightly curfew in place. Hospitals are stretched to the limit, with intensive care units overflowing. A survey by local media outlets found that more than 500 people have died in São Paulo state alone over the past month because there were no ICU beds available. In the federal government, there is still strong resistance from President Jair Bolsonaro against social distancing measures. Bolsonaro spoke about it in a visit on Wednesday to the city of Chapecó, in the southern state of Santa Catarina.
Some people demand a national lockdown, and I have the power to do it, but there will not be a national lockdown. Some dare to say that the armed forces should help governors to enforce restrictive measures. Our Brazilian army will not take to the streets to keep people at home.
In recent weeks, the president changed his position on vaccinating the population. After voicing opposition to this strategy, Bolsonaro is now recommending people get their shots. However, critics say delayed action by the federal government to secure the necessary doses is one of the reasons for the slow pace of immunizations in Brazil. Federal authorities say they are not to blame, that the problem is a shortage of vaccines all over the world. Immunizations have been put on hold in some states because supplies have run out. So far, less than 10% of the population has received at least one dose of the vaccine, and less than 3% are fully vaccinated, far short of the percentages necessary to contain the continued spread of the virus.
That was Paulo Cabral reporting from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Moderna Chief Medical Officer Tal Zaks says the company will be able to provide a booster shot for protection against variants of the coronavirus by the end of this year.
We've learned over this year how to connect what we measure in the immune response to the ability to prevent disease. And so we can now do much faster and easier studies and prove that indeed, if you come in with a booster shot, a third dose, 6 months after you got your initial series, can I boost the immune system in the right way to now be fully protected against these variants? We've started those trials already because we were able to put it in production quickly.
Meanwhile, Zach says vaccines will be absolutely sufficient following President Joe Biden's announcement that every adult in America will be offered a vaccine by April 19th. Most U.S. states had already said they'll open vaccines to all adults by that new target date. Mayor Bill de Blasio says the first COVID-19 mobile vaccine clinics have rolled into New York City to bring vaccinations to underserved communities.
So one of the new approaches that we are using is a mobile vaccination bus. And this bus is really exciting. It's going to be a game changer as well. We can do up to 200 vaccinations per day through this bus. This is an approach that's really going to help us reach a lot of people who are being missed so far, but this will take the vaccinations right to them.
Each mobile vaccination clinic can accommodate up to 6 people at a time. The one-dose Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccination will be offered. Restaurant workers and delivery workers will be among the first to be offered the vaccine. Police expert has testified that Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck and was bearing down with his weight the entire time Floyd was handcuffed and lying face down. Sergeant Jody Steger gave testimony as a prosecution expert based on his review of video evidence.
Yes,
My opinion was that no force should have been used once he was in that position.
Steger says Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck or neck area from the time officers put Floyd on the ground all the way until paramedics arrived. On cross-examination, defense attorney Eric Nelson repeatedly argued that Chauvin and the other officers who were present acted reasonably. He said that Floyd was initially resisting, but they called for paramedics and suggested that Chauvin had tried to calm Floyd down. U.S. President Joe Biden has spoken to King Abdullah II of Jordan and offered his support for the country and affirmed the two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine issue. The White House said that Biden noted the importance of the Jordanian king's leadership to the United States and the region. The two leaders also discussed bilateral ties and strengthening cooperation on political and economic issues. The phone discussion on Wednesday came days after the king's half-brother, Prince Hamza, was accused of being part of a plot against the government. On Wednesday, the Biden administration also announced plans to restore U.S. assistance for the Palestinian people. Jordan is a U.S. ally and is home to millions of Palestinian refugees. Yemen's state-run news agency says landmines laid by the Houthi group during the years-long civil war in Yemen have killed nearly 8,000 people so far. It says the landmines have also killed over 60 bomb disposal technicians affiliated with pro-government forces. Disposal techs have dismantled and destroyed around 690,000 mines and explosive devices during the past 6 years in the country. Previous reports by humanitarian organizations suggested that Yemen has become one of the largest landmine battlefields in the entire world since World War II. Yemen's been mired in a civil war since late 2014, when the Iran-backed Houthi militia seized control of several northern Yemeni provinces.
Want a deep analysis of the biggest and unmissable news stories of the day? Subscribe to the Top Story on your favorite
Important developments today was that those areas of the city where there is the highest transmission rates, and that is, I think, targeted approach to vaccinations. It's almost as if we have two things going on. We have a vaccination implementation schedule on one hand,
we're spreading
and then we have a shifting dynamic with
B21 overnight. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, Beijing says the revive
surgery in New York City. Thanks for talking with us today.
19 vaccine and a rare clotting disorder. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Join the most popular Chinese language learning page on Facebook by searching for CRI Learn Chinese. It's a quick yet fun way to achieve your language goals. Start your free lessons now with unlimited videos, photos, and text tutorials on expressions and Chinese culture. CRI Learn Chinese Facebook page. The world opens with 您好.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday.
Now here's your host, Shane Bigham, with you on this Thursday morning. Still to come in business, a possible secondary listing in Hong Kong for Trippz. In sports, PSG takes a measure of revenge against Bayern Munich. In culture and entertainment, Chinese film Haimon takes a top spot in the record books. There are several ways to contact us. You can talk to us on Twitter at The Beijing Hour or visit the Beijing Hour page on Facebook for more news, videos, and analysis. Now, today's headlines. The Chinese president has urged Germany and the European Union to make joint efforts with China to promote healthy cooperation and bring more certainty and stability to a volatile world. Xi Jinping made the remarks in a phone conversation with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. He says China-Germany ties have been growing steadily and show strong resilience and potential despite the COVID-19 pandemic. China's remained Germany's largest trading partner globally for 5 consecutive years now. Next year will mark the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and Germany. The Chinese president says the two sides should seize the opportunity to boost exchanges in technology, education, culture, and sports. Angela Merkel says strengthening EU-China dialogue and cooperation is not only in the interest of both sides, but also beneficial to the world, adding that Germany is willing to play a positive role in this regard. She says Germany is willing to work with China to strengthen exchanges and cooperation in such fields as the fight against COVID-19, climate change, and biodiversity. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian says the upgraded IMF forecast on China's economic growth rate reflects world confidence in the Chinese economy.
The IMF expected the global recovery to be stronger than before. This is the result of the active international cooperation among different countries in fighting the pandemic and vigorously promoting the resumption of production and work. This has proved the necessity and effectiveness for the international community to strengthen solidarity and coordination in tackling the global crisis.
Zhao says the Chinese economy was among the first to get out of the crisis last year and injected strong impetus into the recovery and development of the global economy. The spokesman says the international community should continue its cooperation throughout the global economic recovery. The IMF put China's 2021 growth at 8.4% in its latest issue of the World Economic Outlook, up 0.3 points from its January forecast. A state council executive meeting yesterday called for more measures to improve internet services and medical insurance support. The meeting said that China will encourage telecommunications companies to further cut the average fees of broadband and dedicated lines for small and medium-sized enterprises by 10%. The country will also lower market entry appropriately for companies providing broadband installation services. Meanwhile, more measures will be taken to ease the burden on patients. The country will incorporate more types of outpatient fees into its medical reimbursement list. The meeting also called for tightened inspection and regulation of the use of medical insurance funds. Raili in Yunnan province is conducting a second round of citywide nucleic acid testing for COVID-19. Local officials say over 185,000 nucleic acid samples have been tested, while roughly 2,000 serum samples have also been collected and tested as of noon on Wednesday. Dozens of locally transmitted COVID-19 cases have been reported in the city since March 30th. As of Tuesday, 68 confirmed cases and 46 asymptomatic cases are receiving treatment or under medical observation in designated hospitals in Yunnan. European Medicines Agencies found a possible link between AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine and a rare clotting disorder. But the agency says the combination of blood clots and low blood platelets is very rare, and the overall benefits of the shot outweigh the risk. Agency Executive Director Emer Cook says the results show that their system of monitoring side effects is working.
This case clearly demonstrates one of the challenges posed by large-scale vaccination campaigns. When millions of people receive these vaccines, very rare events can occur that were not identified during the clinical trials.
Findings were released after the regulator assessed over 80 cases of unusual blood clots after people were given the AstraZeneca shot in Europe and the UK. 18 of these cases resulted in death. The agency says the investigation was unable to determine the specific cause of the blood clotting. Meantime, the World Health Organization said in a statement on Wednesday a link between the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine and the blood clots with low blood platelets is considered plausible, but it's not being confirmed. U.S. President Joe Biden has spoken to King Abdullah II of Jordan and offered his support for the country and affirmed the two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine issue. The White House said that Biden noted the importance of the Jordanian king's leadership to the United States in the region. The two leaders also discussed bilateral ties and strengthening cooperation on political and economic issues. The phone discussion on Wednesday came days after the king's half-brother, Prince Hamza, was accused of being part of a plot against the government. On Wednesday, the Biden administration also announced plans to restore U.S. assistance to the Palestinian people. Jordan is a U.S. ally and is home to millions of Palestinian refugees. This is Shane Bigham live from the Chinese capital. Coming up in business, a secondary listing in Hong Kong for Trippz.
You're listening to the Beijing Hour. 60 minutes of comprehensive news. Your window on.
The reality is that other countries that had vaccine before us have done this as well. They closed and vaccinated, and then once they've vaccinated, you can see it in other countries that they are done with COVID. And so if we want to protect our hospitals and healthcare system, this is our last chance. This is our last chance to make sure we get this right. The last
all the animals are getting this shit too. How the fuck?
He got the green light last month from the listing committee of Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing. Trippz first listed on the NASDAQ back in 2003. More on that, joined by financial analyst South San. Good morning, first of all. And so Trippz is seeking the secondary listing on the 19th in Hong Kong. How do you expect the markets to react to the listing if it all goes ahead as planned?
Well, I think it's been listed at a optimal time, given that we have seen a recovery in traveling and accommodation services. We're also seeing the rollout of vaccination. So markets should be optimistic about the near future earnings of a lot of these service companies and give it a fair valuation.
Well, Trippz among several Chinese tech giants that have been expected to make secondary listings in Hong Kong since early last year. So why is there so much interest in secondary listings in Hong Kong among these mainland companies?
Well, I think this is really part of the broader Sino-US relationship. We know that many Chinese companies are subject to the risk of delisting and extra auditing risk. So in order to shield themselves from this risk and to comply with Chinese law on the grounds of national security, I think it makes sense for a lot of them to choose Hong Kong as the secondary market to list.
And how do you expect Trippz to use the money that's raised by this listing if and when it happens?
Well, they'll use it productively to expand their business, and they will be meeting with a lot of investors about the use of the funds, and they will try to grow their company and to create a positive return for the shareholders.
All right, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's financial analyst Cao San on Trippz expected listing in Hong Kong coming up on the 19th. Chinese spending or consumer spending on the Chinese mainland continued strong momentum during the three-day Qingming Festival. Official data shows that retail sales rose 17.8% from last year's figure. Spending on travel, food, phones, and clothing increased rapidly, with growth ranging from 20 to 50%. Spending on hospitality services rose by 91.5%, while income generated from tourism-related services posted an increase of roughly 189%. Chinese online clearinghouse NetsUnion and card payment giant UnionPay reported higher payments during the Qingming holiday. Combined remittance on the two platforms reached about 3.5 trillion yuan, or roughly $542 billion during the three-day holiday. NetsUnion processed more than 4.6 billion online payment transactions worth over 2.6 trillion yuan, both record highs when compared to previous years. In the meantime, China UnionPay reported transactions to the tune of 903.6 billion yuan, and that was a gain of 3.6%. China Development Bank is pledged to beef up financial support for scientific and technological innovation over the next 5 years. The policy bank says 300 billion yuan, or nearly $46 billion, will be made available under a special loan program during this period. Loans worth 50 billion yuan are expected to be issued this year. The special loan program will focus on supporting original innovation and fundamental research on strategic projects in science and technology fields. South Korean tech giant Samsung says profit increased 44% in the first quarter as COVID-19 raised demand for mobiles and home appliances. Samsung is projecting operating profit of $8.3 billion for the January to March quarter. Operating profit for Samsung's mobile phone unit is likely to have hit $4.1 billion in the first quarter. And its flagship Galaxy S21 smartphone series likely topped 1 million 2 months after its January release. The number of Samsung smartphones shipped during the first quarter is estimated at around 75.5 million. The estimated operating profit of the consumer electronics unit reached 1 trillion won, over $896.3 million in the first quarter. The International Monetary Fund has upgraded its forecast for global growth this year, pointing to successful coronavirus vaccine rollouts in some countries. But as Giles Gibson reports, the IMF warns that the risk of global financial instability is still high.
As more people around the world get vaccinated against COVID-19, the International Monetary Fund is growing more optimistic about the prognosis for the global economy. It's predicting 6% growth in 2021 in its latest World Economic Outlook report, up from the last forecast of 5.5% in January.
A way out of this health and economic crisis is increasingly visible. Thanks to the ingenuity of the scientific community, hundreds of millions of people are being vaccinated, and this is expected to power recoveries in many countries later this year.
Vaccines aren't the only reason for optimism, though. US President Joe Biden has signed a $1.9 trillion relief package since the IMF's last forecast, a bill dubbed the American Rescue Plan. Next, he wants to spend another $2 trillion on a vast infrastructure package. The IMF says the US will see 6.4% growth this year and China 8.4%, the world's two largest economies rebounding from a dismal 2020. But for countries still waiting for vaccines and unable to spend their way out of trouble, the IMF is warning of daunting challenges ahead.
The economy has benefited from extraordinary policy measures that have eased financial conditions, preventing a deeper economic downturn. But those actions may have unintended consequences. Valuations for risk assets have become stretched. Financial vulnerabilities have intensified.
The IMF also fears the world's uneven vaccination effort is already potentially holding back the recovery in some regions. While the majority of adults in the US could be vaccinated by late summer, low-income countries will have to wait much longer for precious doses and their economic benefits.
That was Giles Gibson reporting on the IMF's revised forecast for global growth. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, PSG takes a measure of revenge against Bayern Munich.
The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour brings you an hour of comprehensive news and information from both China and the rest of the world.
You should be catching on that, but they're not going to be able to get the vaccines before they get the actual virus, right? And then there's other guys saying that's the best immunity, and then people keep talking about herd immunity, but the Brazilians backed off of that policy or something. This is all bullshit.
Now it's time. Chopper traffic. Here's Ari Rabinovich.
Carter is closed right now in the eastern part of the GTA, and that's because of overnight construction related to that long-term project. So the east.
Pathological. Keep it up, bro. The fuck?
This is after a great header from Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, and I think that they took advantage of Marquinhos going up in defense for PSG following an injury when he scored his goal.
Okay, but there's music playing in the background, and I really don't want to be hearing that. I don't like people pumping audio.
A free kick, and PSG surrendered their 2-goal lead. But PSG finally caught Bayern on the break, as I predicted, after an excellent run and finish from Mbappe, who beat the offside trap for his second and PSG's third goal. In the other match, Chelsea defeated FC Porto by 2-0. In the first half, Chelsea started very well, making the pitch wide in the early stages, and Porto, it looked like they started to fight.
Oh, this is interesting. Why don't you just close the browser yourself again, dog? I keep turning the fucking audio on and off real low. But apparently all you can play is what I've already got on the system. So I've got this black screen I'm looking at. The fuck is that? What the fuck is this? I didn't pull this back up. We'll pull up the radio. You do something, though. You've got the worst fucking internet connection in the world, dog. So in 2 or 3 minutes, I'll be like, my machine is literally waiting for his machine to answer with his malware on his shit or whatever. Yeah, flash. Come on, let's go. Jesus, all that to bring me this. Okay, so click here. This screen's all fucked up. This is so creative. So creative. Wow. You shoved it to the other side. Wow, this is so creative. Did you crash the browser, you fucking idiot? So, we got it this far. I would like to find out what that audio stream is playing in the background. Oh, it's SoundCloud. Okay. Oh. So it's funny how these glitches are like responding to what I say instead of the inputs I'm getting. Media box launcher isn't responding. That's interesting because no one is interacting with that except maybe somebody else. Oh. This is the extent of what you can make happen. Yes, please keep showing me my eyes closed. What's the message there, Doug? Oh, Jesus fucking Christ, man. This is wastemanship. What you're doing is wastemanship. This button, what happens? So it's playing the podcast thing about the genetic testing. What exactly are we doing or not doing here, Doug? Get a better internet connection. Like, seriously. Either this works or it doesn't work. I can still hear it, so if you can play that, you can play this too, no? Could you not get creative, leave a chat message and threaten me again or something? Like, this is fucking boring, dog. This is just boring. I know I said I got hours to fill, but I didn't realize. I didn't realize you would go through this much trouble to make sure I don't go offline. That's ridiculous, dog. You're fucking retarded. You hate us this much. Why are you still on this shit? Fuck off, kill yourself. Oh. Alright, so if you really want to see, I, again, can't show you, but I guess somewhere in here you can get the picture. Train piano smashing sound again, dog. No, you've gone over to my cell phone. Wow, you're interesting, bro. That connection's unstable. Of course it is. It's gonna bounce back and forth between this one and the cell phone, over and fucking over. I'm not allowed to end the video, so I'm gonna just wait 3 or 4 minutes here for the turn off the whatever. This is how this chomo spends his hours and days. He's using scripts he copied off some fucking dark web thing. At some point, one of the inputs will work, and I'll be able to turn off this fucking sound in the background. So skilled, chomo. You do this to little kids and old people, right? All day, little kids and old people. So in reality, the more time I waste of yours, the better. Oh, this is interesting. The simplest app that never crashes won't even fucking work. Interesting. And there's like full auto help from nothing. Yeah, keep chill, bro. Keep it up. Look.